Listen up, this is a Porsche Cayenne Coupe, and in this review I'm going to be sharing my thoughts on whether this base level trim is the one you want to get by covering its interior, driving dynamics, and much more. So let's get started with this review of the Porsche Cayenne Coupe. So let's start the review off by thanking Porsche of downtown LA for giving me access to this Cayenne Coupe today. If you happen to be interested in this car or any other new or pre-owned Porsche product, make sure you give them a call. I've left all their information in the description below. Now let's go ahead and start the review off by talking about the interior quality and the design. Starting off with the quality, and this being a Porsche product, the quality is naturally very, very good. It's really nice looking, very simple, very clean as far as this design goes. But the one area I do feel like there's some shoddiness here. The lower part of the bumper is just all, not the bumper, the dash is all hard plastic. Down here in the center sections, all plastic. This being a $80,000 base car, I do wish that the standard interior, which this is, had a little bit more finer looking leather on the door and on the dash here, but I guess Porsche just wants to charge you a little bit extra for that. Nonetheless, the design, as I was saying, is very simple, it's very clean. You can see that through the minimization of buttons in all modern Porsches. The funny thing here is there are more buttons on the steering wheel than there are in the infotainment system. It's all basically run touch capacitive. Everything here in the center compartment or in the center section here by your transmission controller are all touch capacitive buttons that light up as LCDs. Now let's talk about the overall size in here. I'm 5'11" and I'm fitting in here just fine. Several inches of headroom on top of me. My seat is not in its lowest seating position. The overall front compartment is wonderful. I do feel like I have just enough distance between me and the front passenger. So it's a really nice size car. Of course, this being a Porsche, it is somewhat driver focused. So having something very large is not something that Porsche is really trying to strive in the Cayenne. Now, the seat and the comfort. So this is the 14-way seat. This is not the base seat. This comes as a part of a a la carte option, or you can get it in the premium package. But the seat is very comfortable. Porsche seats in general, even the standard 8-way seat is very good. But once you jump into the 14-way and the 18-way seats, they just get so much more comfortable. And it's no different here. These 14-ways are extremely comfortable. They have side bolsters, thigh bolsters, and they hold you in very nicely laterally. And I could see any body size being able to fit in the 14-way seat. All right, now let's switch gears and talk about some technology. So the infotainment system, this is a 12.3-inch screen. It is wonderful to look at. The graphics are very crisp, very clean. The overall look of it is really nice. I love the way how it's integrated into the dash. There isn't any type of screen just being stuck up on there. Very nicely done by Porsche. The software itself is Porsche's latest PCM system, and for 2022 model year and above, Porsche really tweaked this to make it simpler. It's very, very easy to use. The intuitiveness and the accessibility of the things that you want right at the fingertips is perfect. So as an example, in the home screen here, you have the ability to move the buttons to the top row. So anything that you access frequently, you just move that to the top row and it's right there, very easy for you to access. Then you've also got these shortcuts running along the left-hand side for the nav, for radio, for the car settings, for your phone, and this really makes it extremely simple and easy to use. You can go in and customize things in menus and things like that, but if you really wanted to just come in here, it'll take you a couple minutes to get acquainted, set everything up the way you wanted it to, and that's it. Now you also have tech in your gauge cluster. There's an analog tachometer and two LCD screens flanking the left and the right. You have the ability to change what these screens are showing. You can put up, obviously, your speedometer, your info about the car, There's also navigation, other Bluetooth related items, what radio station, things like that. So you can control a lot of things from the tip of your fingertips using the steering wheel buttons and the screens in front of you. And then as far as charging goes, you have two USB type A outlets right here in the center compartment area. Now, one thing I forgot to mention about the infotainment system is you have the ability to run wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto as a wired function. Now let's move to the back seats and I'll tell you what's going on over there. All right, so now let's talk about the back seat in the Cayenne Coupe, and let's start off with the overall size. So I'm sitting behind myself at 5'11". You can see I have several inches of leg room here. As far as headroom, I'm sitting straight up and my hair is surprisingly not touching the ceiling. So surprising, because sloping roof cars like this Cayenne Coupe generally sacrifice some of this rear seat headroom, but it's actually pretty good in the Cayenne, and I would imagine somebody a couple inches taller than I am would fit back here, but they would probably start grazing this ceiling here. Now, the overall width or the size or the seating capacity, you can fit 3 people in here because this has the 2+1 comfort seating configuration. 3 adults my size will fit, but it might be a little bit of a squeeze, but 3 children will fit in here just fine. Now, as far as some of the other amenities, this does have a really cool feature, and that's to be able to recline the seats. So if you wanted to sit a little straighter, you can. If you want to recline and have a little bit more relaxed seating position, you can do that as well. Now, as far as charging goes, you have 3 different ports. You have 2 USB type A and 1 12-volt outlet. So this is very, very important for me. At least I always make sure that the backseat passengers are covered, because everybody now has a connected device. Your children with their iPads and adults with their cell phones. So the more charging ports back here, the better, and the Cayenne's got 3 of them. And finally, rounding it off with the armrest. So there are 2 cup holders and a nice cushiony armrest to rest your arm. So with the back seat out of the way, now let's jump to the cargo area and talk about some of the practical features with the trunk space. All right, so now let's talk practicality by looking at how much trunk space there is in the Cayenne Coupe. So there's multiple ways of opening this trunk. There's a button on the interior, there's a button on the key, there's comfort access right here on top of the license plate, and then there's also the kicking motion underneath the rear bumper, which is very helpful when you're walking to your trunk and you've got a bunch of stuff in your hands. Now let's go ahead and open this thing up and let me give you some of the details. Beeps while it's opening. There's 22 cubic feet of space in the back of the Cayenne Coupe. Now, you are sacrificing some cubic feet compared to the traditional Cayenne SUV because of the sloping style rear hatch. But there's plenty of storage room back here. I could easily see you fit multiple pieces of traveling equipment, your day-to-day groceries, your knickknacks, your child stroller, and additional things. So there's plenty of space back here. If you needed a little bit more space and you didn't have any rear passengers, you can fold down the rear seats to expand the cargo area to 55 cubic feet of space. So again, plenty of space in the back of the Cayenne Coupe. As far as closing the trunk, there's a button here. It's electronic closing. You push that and it will close for you. Super convenient feature. Now let's move to the engine details and I'll tell you what's going on underneath the hood. So the engine details in the Cayenne Coupe. This thing is equipped with a 3-liter turbocharged 6-cylinder making 335 horsepower and 332 pounds-feet of torque. It's mated to an 8-speed Tiptronic automatic transmission, and it's putting power down to all 4 wheels. Now, the 0 to 60 time in the Cayenne Coupe is 5.7 seconds. It's a couple ticks slower than the competition in the BMW X6, which comes in at 5.3 seconds. Now, one area where the Cayenne Coupe excels over the BMW X6 is in the towing compartment, which is quite surprising because not many people buy these Porsches for towing capacity, but this is very, very capable. 7,700 pounds when equipped properly. Now, as far as gas mileage, 19 in the city, 23 on the highway for a combined average of 20. Now, switching to the suspension, the Cayenne Coupe comes equipped with the 4D chassis control system with adaptive shocks. So this gives you the ability to firm up or soften down your ride based off of your road conditions. And if you wanted to, you even have the ability to option in air suspension, which I can tell you is absolutely fantastic in these Cayenne Coupes. I experienced that in the Cayenne Coupe Turbo SE Hybrid. But nonetheless, I'll give you my perspective during the driving portion of the review. And speaking of the driving portion of the review, let's get to that so we can see what this thing feels like behind the wheel. All right, so now the driving portion of the review. And as always, where's the key? Key's in my pocket. This is what the key looks like. It's just a regular Porsche key. Nothing really special going on here. Overall visibility is fantastic. This does have a blind spot monitoring system. It does have rear view cameras. You can option in additional 360-degree cameras and more sophisticated technology there, but this I find to be adequate in the base level of the coupe or the Cayenne Coupe. Now let's go ahead and turn this thing on and go for a quick drive. Start, stop, or the ignition key over here on the left-hand side. And when it starts up, it's a very smooth and docile motor. This 6-cylinder. Put it in drive, take the parking brake off, and let's see what this thing feels like behind the wheel. And immediately when you take off, this does have a really nice high command driving position. So given that this is a mid-size to full-size SUV, it's a really nice seating position. I like it a lot. Now I'm gonna go ahead and put this thing into Sport Plus mode and see what this 6-cylinder has as far as its power delivery and just the overall feel of the sensation of speed, at least. So let's go ahead and put it in manual shift mode. Remember, this is the Tiptronic, not a PDK in the Cayenne models. And let's see what's got. Okay, what got confused there for a second. Really nice, decent speed, decent acceleration. Let's downshift from third to second. Gas. Yeah, it goes. It goes really nicely, and it's I think the amount of speed that you get in this Cayenne with 335 horsepower, it's more than adequate to get your blood pumping just a little bit, and also really good for obviously day-to-day driving situations. It's more than enough. Passing on the highway is good enough, and just overall daily driving scenarios, this would perform really, really nicely. The power delivery is actually quite docile when you're driving it normally like this. It feels very smooth and a nice powertrain. But the flip side of that is when you're driving it quickly, it feels pretty lively. I wasn't expecting it to be like that. Like the BMW straight 6-cylinder that you'll find in the X6 feels very, very lively almost all the time. But this kind of has a little bit of a dual nature capability. So when you're driving it in the normal mode, it feels quite docile and comfortable. So now let's switch over and talk about the steering feel. So it's got a pretty nice weight to it, even in normal mode. So if you're somebody who likes a nice firm wheel, and even when you put it in Sport or in Sport Plus, it's got decent weighting to it. It doesn't feel too artificial and fake like some other cars do. But again, for daily driving scenarios, you really want to be in normal mode. Some of those Sport and Sport Plus mode for the suspension and the steering feedback are really overkill. Now, let's switch over into the suspension and the overall ride comfort. So this is a really comfortable car to drive. I say it does a decent job at overall adapting to road conditions and making it the most comfortable ride that you can get in an SUV. And I say that because I've driven more comfortable SUVs than this. It does have some underlying sportiness and some firmness built into its suspension, and you can certainly feel it immediately once you jump into this thing. This isn't some squishmobile where it's just a slush box and it just rides around all bellowy and stuff. This is still a Porsche underneath the skin, and Porsche, more than any other company, builds sportiness into even their regular non-911, non-Boxster, non-sporty cars. Now, what do I think of this overall? I think this is a wonderful car. From a speed standpoint, it's more than adequate. From an overall usability standpoint, daily driving, the ergonomics, the overall Porsche experience is alive and well in this. And the feeling that you get when you drive this car is that it's a buttoned down, high quality driving experience. Something very similar to what you get in many other Porsche cars, if not all of the Porsche cars. The deviation is when you go into the sports cars that Porsche makes, it delivers a more oriented experience for a sports car, but here it's tailored differently. Nonetheless, it's still a wonderful, wonderful driving experience. When I drive Porsche cars, people say, oh, it's a little bit more expensive than the competition, but get in a Porsche and drive one. And in my opinion, they are well worth some of the extra dollars that you're going to spend. And not only for the experience here, there's also some brand name image that's delivered with the Porsche name that some of the other German manufacturers don't have. So that's pretty much it. I know I probably didn't answer all of your questions. Please make sure you leave me a comment down below with your questions or send me a message on Instagram at DriveSteady. Otherwise, if you've gotten to this point, thank you for watching. Until next time, drive steady.